This friend is Amamiya. Just early in the morning, a lizard who claimed to be a knight came here to borrow his power to protect the earth together. Amamiya grabbed it and threw it straight out, and returned to the room no matter what. It kept asking Amamiya for help. Amamiya lifted it up. The lizard struggled, but Amamiya didn't care. Once again he threw it outside. Amamiya then took a bicycle to go to school, was contemplating, then crawled on his shoulder, causing Amamiya to startle and fall off the bike. There was no way, so he let it go with him. At school he meets teacher Asahi. Only Amamiya could see the man on her shoulder. The teacher laughed when she saw the wound on Amamiya's face. Amamiya went to his seat to find that he still didn't believe in his mission. The lizard pointed him to the ring on his hand and only focused on it to use his superpower. Amamiya didn't finish explaining, but Amamiya was able to do it, making me very surprised. He started playing around with this skill. Asahi ran over to see his wound, but Amamiya backed away. Amamiya just now wondered if this thing could move. Noi sneered, of course, it could even help him fly. Amamiya controlled the teacher's skirt and ran away. When he got home, he started lecturing him again. They must work together to find the princess as quickly as possible. Amamiya has no intention of participating. Amamiya went out of the restaurant and continued to follow. It doesn't even matter why it was sent to such a coward. Noi was startled. An enemy came and urged Amamiya to run immediately. Amamiya ran for her life but eventually ran out of breath. The monster approached. In an instant it teleported in front of Amamiya. He used the power to support the movement to avoid the attack, but the second hit was not good. At this moment, the beautiful neighbor appeared to punch the monster. Noi looked at the ring and immediately recognized this person as its princess and spoke badly about Amamiya. That night Amamiya returned to learn how to fly, but his physical strength was not enough to lift his whole body. Amamiya went out to have dinner again, and someone came from behind, startling Amamiya. Noi knew he was afraid of monsters. The only way to get rid of his insecurity was to face it. Amamiya refused. This afternoon, because their houses were close together, they went home together. Sammy had a feeling that Amamiya was familiar, and so was Amamiya. At that moment, teacher Asahi rushed over and grabbed Amamiya by the neck. Amamiya tried to explain that she forgave him. The next day when he got to school, Sammy was waiting for him. There was something she needed to show him. She led Amamiya to the rooftop, only to see Amamiya turning pale with a giant hammer on it. This thing will destroy the earth. Sammy jumps on the roof to ask Amamiya to be his knight. Seeing that he didn't say anything, she jumped down herself. Amamiya rushed to save Sammy. Amamiya knelt down to pledge allegiance to Sammy. Episode 2. Since that moment Amamiya Yuhi has become the princess's person. However, this scared him. His grandfather taught him not to make friends and make enemies, but to live a lonely life. Yuhi wakes up from his dream to see the lizard standing in front of him angrily throwing it against the wall. Then he prepared to go to the gym with Samidare. Just did a few push-ups, but Yuhi couldn't breathe anymore. On the contrary, Sammy was very strong. After practice, Sammy asks Yuhi to go home for a drink. As soon as he entered the door, he immediately met Asahi undressing. It's not difficult to understand when he got hit right after. The teacher has a job, so she forgives Yuhi. He and the princess had a meal together. It had been a long time since he had eaten such a decent meal. Sammy wondered when the lizard didn't eat. As long as Yuhi eats, the nutrients will be transferred to her, because they don't know about this yet, so the two argue. Yuhi doesn't care. What he needs is to enjoy the warmth of family when the past reappears. That night Yuhi continued to practice again. He had improved a lot but had to work harder. The next morning, Yuhi got up early to exercise, just went out to the balcony, but the chains of the past have returned. Sammy called him when he woke up. They discussed how to destroy the hammer. While Yuhi was still bewildered, Sammy pulled his hand up to the roof. In the future, Yuhi will definitely jump higher than her, that's why she cooperates with him. The next day Yuhi thought of a way to fly over the bridge to the other side. If successful, he would be able to cut off the tail of the mud doll. As soon as he mentioned it, Yuhi threw her legs around her neck and ran away. He used his power to block one of its attacks but was also cornered. Sammy appeared. The doll ate one shot from Sammy. Yuhi gasped in surprise as she jumped so far. Then he went to Sammy's house to have dinner. Asahi-san gets angry, but she has business to go right after, so only Sammy and Yuhi stay. Suddenly, Grandma called Yuhi to tell him that his grandfather had to be hospitalized again. Maybe this will be the last time you see him. Yugi refused with the excuse that he was busy with work. After eating, Yuhi went to the riverside to sit and meditate. With the current situation he was forced to join the war. If he lost, he would make up for it with his mobility. Yuhi used his power to cross the river without success. He fell straight into the water. Yuhi had nightmares again. When he woke up, Sammy was beside him. She gives Yuhi a lot of advice. Yuhi didn't hide it anymore, he told Sammy. At that time, the first time he took his friend home, he got angry and locked him up for 3 days, so whenever he got close to someone, he felt scared. Sammy promises to remove his chains. At this time, Asahi brought food to them to have breakfast together. Yuhi then continued to practice. Episode 3. Yuhi boarded the train home to visit his grandfather. Of course, the lizard was also with him. It reminds Yuhi of the reward for participating in the campaign to protect the Earth. With this wish, Yuhi can cure him of his illness. Yuhi sneered that she still wanted him dead because since he was a child he always infected Yuhi with horrible things. Yuhi came home and leaned back in the living room, confusing the lizard. It turned out that when Yuhi went to school, he was worried that he lived alone, so he moved the whole family here. It's dinner time. The aunt came to call Yuhi for dinner. They love Yuhi very much. After eating, Yuhi led the lizard to her father's room. His father used to be a police officer, but on one mission he died. His mother also disappeared a few days later. He is only a grandfather. Yuhi hates this world and will do whatever it takes for Princess Sammy to destroy the Earth. Yuhi then goes to the hospital to visit him. Having just met Yuhi, Grandpa knelt down and apologized for what he did to him during the past 10 years. He ran outside to keep calm and met the mud body again. Knowing that he can't fight back, he can only run but still can't cut its tail. The monster that unleashed a blow Yuhi fell a great distance away. He leaned against the tree and fell asleep. Yugi appears in a new world, that is in the Knight's Ring. Here he could meet the Princess Sammy in his mind. Yuhi tells Sammy about the chain and how he used her. Sammy doesn't care, she promises as long as Yuhi can come back she will kiss him. Yuhi woke up, the doll was in front of her. Yuhi didn't run away anymore, grabbed the rock combined with the spiritual realm and punched the doll in the stomach. Yuhi ran away right after that. He thought of many ways to survive. Running to the edge of the cliff, Yuhi jumped off without hesitation. This time he was able to control his body to land safely. The doll also jumped down after Yuhi. It was caught in his trap and fell to pieces. At this time, his sister called. His grandfather's condition was critical. He decided to use his knighthood privileges to heal him. The fact remains that he took care of him for the past 10 years. He just didn't want Yuhi to follow in the footsteps of her father being betrayed by his teammates. The next morning, Sammy and Yuhi continued to practice. Yuhi determined to become stronger to protect Sammy. After the training session, someone came to find them. He introduced himself as Han, wishing to defeat the Black Witch. Han left a business card for Yuhi. That evening on the way back they met Han again. He played a pervert with Sammy. She was angry and hit him forever. Yuhi forced the dog to force Han to stop. Han sneered, he just wanted to test the princess's strength. That night, Sammy returned the marriage contract to Yuhi. What she said would definitely be done. Episode 4. The next morning, Yuhi and the princess went for a run. She looked at Yuhi shyly, recalling last night's kiss. They meet Mr. Han at the park. The princess is looking for a stick. She has to take revenge for yesterday. The princess rushed in and hit him repeatedly without hitting him even once. Han then grabbed the princess and threw her away like a child. And Yuhi sat and chatted with the dog Noko. After all, it was just like a lizard. The princess's training session is over. Han will get the credit by borrowing some of the princess's storybooks. She was surprised at how Han was holding his cane. He threw it into the air, and Noko immediately rushed over to nibble on it. Yuhi burst out laughing. Han and the princess went home, and as soon as he met Asahi, he fell in love with lightning. Inside the house, the princess and Yuhi sat down to eat. After taking the story, Han immediately left. At this time, Yuhi commented, "Most likely Han will be the one to thwart their plans. The princess doesn't mind, their goal is to destroy the Earth." Yuhi left and continued to meet the mud doll. He ran away just as Han appeared to save his life. Han fights with the monster. As expected of one of the 3 strongest knights that Han used beyond Yuhi's understanding. He showed a murderous intent when he thought that Han would be an obstacle in the princess's plan. Han compliments Yuhi, most likely to be more promising than the princess. From that day on, Han trained both of them. The princess still couldn't touch Mr. Han. At the end of the training session, he began to inquire about the princess's sister. The princess was a bit reluctant at first, but when she saw the reward, she declared it all. The next day, Yuhi was at the canteen and accidentally met her teacher. How the hell did Han's name appear with her? From what the princess pointed out, Asahi-san likes to eat sweets. So Han gave away a box of limited edition cakes. Asahi turned around and kicked Yuhi. At this time, the teacher has something to ask Yuhi for help. Just now when Han introduced her name reminded her of a student whose name was very similar to Han's. That's why Yuhi has to find out. As expected, that person was Han's younger brother. I just heard that the teacher wanted to know that Han Fei went to answer it directly. And Yuhi came up with the idea of using this love to kill Han. He didn't care what happened next, the lizard warned, but Yuhi was still adamant. How the hell did Han Hung stay in your house? Han has something to show Yuhi that is an anime movie disc. He reminds him to name his powers. Then they went to the princess's house to have dinner. At this moment, Asahi's sister's father returned. Han was shaking like a plow. The next day he asked Yuhi to drink with him. Yuhi doesn't know how to drink but goes anyway. Asahi said a lot about her father, she hated her father very much. They got drunk and had to ask the princess to bring them back.